Hello, and welcome back to The Voiced Self, the podcast where we explore the artistry, health, and psychology of using your voice. I'm Holly.
And I'm Eve. And today we're diving into something every voice user, whether you're a singer, speaker, actor, or teacher, eventually faces: vocal endurance. How do you build it, sustain it, and not completely wreck your voice in the process?
Yes, because it's not just about being loud or speaking for a long time, it's also about being smart, sustainable, and in tune with your whole self.
Yeah, so let's start by defining what we mean by vocal endurance. We're not just talking about hitting high notes or projecting for 2 hours. It's the ability to use your voice consistently, powerfully, and safely over time.
I think that's really interesting. So I like to think of it as if you're some sort of, let's say, marathon runner. You wouldn't run 26 miles every day without building up to it. And your voice works in the same way, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's vocal endurance is more than just a muscle. It's about lots of things: breath control, hydration, the nervous system, regulation, and recovery.
There's loads there, Eve writes. But today we're going to break down these 5 pillars of vocal endurance and how to grow it without burning out.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, let's start with pillar 1 then. We can think of this as breath and body awareness.
Yeah, this has been a theme throughout our podcast, actually, and something you will have heard if you've listened to the previous episodes. If you are not connected to your breath, you are forcing your voice to do all the heavy lifting. So it's like trying to shout from your throat instead of letting your whole body support you. Or what I like to think of, when you're doing an exercise, you're not just using your arms or your legs in that exercise. You need your whole body to support whatever exercise or whatever part of the body that you're working out.
Absolutely, Holly. And we could try this by starting with something really simple like diaphragmatic breathing. And again, last time we went through some breathing exercises that can help with this. But something else you can do is start by laying on your back, place your hands on your belly, and breathe deeply down into your stomach, down towards your stomach, and feel that belly expand as you do this. You can then feel it relax as you let go of the breath. And then you can try and bring in the same breath technique into an upright posture. And also when you're using your voice as well, try to think about it as low, slow, and wide breathing. Again, that breathing technique really is essential to using your voice.
And that was really interesting because, as usual, I was sat slightly hunched over in the chair. And when I went to do the upright posture with my hand on my belly, I immediately corrected my posture, my shoulders back. So posture as part of this is key. So vocal endurance crumbles when your alignment is off, and these hunched shoulders, forward head posture is a recipe for quick and early fatigue.
Absolutely. Your muscles are having to do a lot more heavy lifting if they're not sort of engaged, and the posture isn't quite right. So consider this as your reminder. Your body is an instrument, and your voice is part of that instrument, and you need to use your whole body when using your voice.
Right. And actually, because it's Wimbledon at the moment, just a slight segue, they use their whole body. They're not just using their arms to hit that ball. They are using their whole body to get the weight behind the ball and really, get the ball to go where it needs to go. And it's exactly the same with the voice. If you're not supporting your voice from your whole body, then it doesn't work in the best way possible.
And that's a really nice example.
Sorry, bit of a Wimbledon fan. Pillar 2 is all about technique. And you can't build endurance on a faulty foundation. So we want to talk about how we can get that solid foundation in terms of that technique to build endurance.
Yeah. And let's talk about phonation within this actually. If you're using too much tension, so again, like we spoke about last time, if you're clenching your jaw, if you're squeezing your throat, you'll wear it out really quickly. And efficiency is the goal with this.
Eve, I don't know if you can talk a little bit more about squeezing your throat, because most of us obviously don't physically squeeze our throat. So I don't know if you could just put that into context just a little bit so that we can understand that.
Yeah, good question. I suppose it's about thinking about the muscles that we're using when we're using our voice. And often we can try and squeeze out our voice when we're using it over long periods of time. The muscles surrounding it can tense up. We can kind of force the voice out a little bit. And so when we're doing that, the muscles aren't working efficiently. They're forcing themselves together in order to get that vocal fold closure. But when we're using our voice in a way that we're thinking about the technique, we're actually using a more relaxed use of those muscles. When we're using that breath support, like we just spoke about, and the posture, we're allowing the muscles surrounding the voice to relax a little bit more. And the vocal folds are coming together a lot more gently.
Thank you for that explanation. I think that's really important. And I think, as you've alluded to there, it's the awareness, isn't it? So being aware of what you're doing and being in the moment, in the now, helps you bring that calmness and help release that tension. And if you're not the sort of person that can ground yourself or remove that tension on your own, you can always work with a coach to help them work through things with you step by step, and maybe point things out that you might not be able to notice yourself. Even for a tune-up, it can help. Just like we've talked about, athletes need a trainer to catch faulty form, and voice users also need that feedback to stay safe. And sometimes I think I'm doing something perfectly, or I'm performing an exercise really well, or a yoga position, and I'm doing it to its best. But actually, with the help of the teacher or the coach, they can help me actually catch sometimes what I can't see to be faulty form, and make sure I can perform in the best way possible.
Yeah, absolutely, Holly. That guidance can be really useful, can't it? And sometimes we can be using those muscles, whatever it is that we're doing, and not realizing that we're doing it a little bit wrong. So having that one-to-one support that's tailored towards the way that you are using your muscles can be really useful. Another thing is warm-ups. They're almost like vocal stretching. And again, these can be tailored towards each individual. But generally, a gentle glide on moving it up and down can be really helpful. And lip trills, like we spoke about last time, they can be gold. For more information on these, please do listen back to our previous episode 2, which was on untangling vocal tension. Hopefully you'll find that really useful if you do notice that you've got that tension within your voice.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Eve. I think that can just bring that sense of self back to the present, and you can really feel that vibrating in your chest. So small things like onset and tone, airflow and resonance can add up over time. So when we think about onset and tone, we often think that volume means confidence. We've all been in that room with that really loud person that thinks if I speak the loudest, I'm the most confident. You don't have to be loud to show confidence in how you use your voice and how you show up. So that's something to think about. And also airflow, which is closely linked to the breathing, which we've talked about previously. And resonance. So resonance is quite a hard one to think about, but what I like to visualize is the ocean. And on a hot summer's day, the waves are gentle and they lap and they're consistent and smooth, versus think of a more stormy day when the waves are crashing, they're sporadic and variable and less predictable and harder to maintain, right? We don't get storms every day. Efficient technique is vocal longevity in this regard. So on a good day, a healthy vocal day, we might like to think that our voice is like a sunny day's calm ocean. And during times when we have higher or strained vocal load, our voice might be a bit more like the stormy sea day. So just thinking about that and visualizing that sea can help you consider your voice, these elements, and ensure that you get more sunny than stormy sea days.
Thanks, Holly. I think that's a really nice image to use and helps us to actually visualize where are we within our voice today. Yeah, that's a really helpful one. The next pillar we can think about is a huge one, which is load management. Just like when you exercise your body, your voice also needs cycles of exertion and recovery. And this is where people can overdo it. More isn't always better, and vocal growth doesn't come from the grind. It comes from progressive training and adequate rest. Again, thinking about that marathon runner that Holly mentioned earlier, they're not going to go straight into the 26 miles. They're going to do it incrementally. It might be useful here to think about the 80-20 rule. So when you're using your voice, only push it to about 80% of its capacity in terms of the volume, the duration, the pitch. Keep 20% in the tank. That way you're going to keep building your voice and not burning.
I really like that. And it's important to schedule in your vocal rest, especially if you're someone who uses your voice professionally, and you've got lots of performances. So make sure you're resting after a performance. If you're a teacher and you've got a long teaching week at the end of each day, and even if you're in the office or you've got a day of busy meetings and presentations, it's easy to overlook how much we use our voice and how much strain we put on our voice if we're not thinking about it and we're not present in the moment. So it's really important to schedule that time to rest your voice.
Yeah, absolutely. I think quite a lot about teachers, especially when it's Parents' Evening week and they're having to use their voice for teaching all day and then go and have 3, 4, 5 hours of one-to-one meetings. And I suppose at times it can be really hard to rest your voice, using a week like that as an example. But on those weeks, thinking about when you get home, can you just completely rest your voice? Scheduling that in a little bit more purposefully than you might need to on an average week, for example. And thinking about this as recovery being training for your voice as well.
I think that's really nice, Eve. I think the challenge here is that we don't often think of our voice and our vocal tract as a muscle or something that needs to be trained. People, and myself included, take it for granted that we have a voice and we can use it every day, usually without much issue. And it's usually only, unfortunately, when we get an issue, when we lose our voice, when we have a sore throat or some dysfunction from a physical perspective, that we notice it. But actually, that's the whole point of these podcasts as well, right? To look at the voice as a muscle, or part of a muscle in the tract, and actually how we can use it better and avoid overusing it and avoid those times when we get to dysfunction and issue by just spending a little bit more time thinking about, actually, it is a muscle, and you need to look after it to be able to use it well, and for it to have longevity.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Holly. The group of muscles surrounding the vocal tract and within the vocal tract itself take on a huge amount of load that you're absolutely right, we often don't think about. And hopefully by listening to this and following some of these really simple steps, it might help you to maintain and maybe even improve your vocal use.
And another point on that before we just move on to the next pillar is also the jaw and the link to the jaw and the vocal tract. A colleague of mine was talking about long-term jaw issues that he experiences, and a lot of it has stemmed from the posture part. So, hunched over shoulders, tension in the neck muscles, which has led on one side to a persistent, I'm going to refer to it as lockjaw, and that restricted movement in the jaw, which impedes speech and the ability to have voice with endurance.
Wow, yeah, that's a great example. And I'm just wondering, has he found anything that's helped in particular?
Various treatments, so vocal massage treatments, has also seen an osteopath, and the vocal treatment sessions have helped. So more often at the beginning, so more frequent basis, and then slightly more spread out in the longer term over a period of probably 6 months. And actually now is getting to the stage where it needs to restart, I think, those more frequent sessions. And I actually think it's because of this lack of awareness to some extent that we're talking about here. It's not just a problem that needs a fix. It's not just a have a massage and it's better. It is all the stuff that we're covering today, which is just that awareness of, how am I using my voice? How am I breathing? How is my posture? Am I taking a rest? All of these things that we know, if we don't not constantly think about them, but if we're not present and think about them frequently, that we end up, going back to issues and having consistent issues for longer periods of time.
I suppose thinking about the voice really holistically is super important to that vocal endurance and maintenance as well.
And it's like we said, it's just that awareness of it. We take it for granted because we all have a voice and it works mostly. So it's thinking about it as a tool and as something that we need to look after. And I don't know if we can refer it to maybe like using a mobile phone. We charge our mobile phone every day to make sure that it's going to be working for us the next day. Religiously, mine is on charge at the end of the day. So how do we make sure we recharge our voice and look after all of the muscles that support that action, to get the best battery power for ourselves every day?
That's a really nice way to think about it, and a great way to bring it back to recovery as well.
Okay, so now on to pillar 4, and this is all about hydration, sleep, and nutrition.
Yeah, and hydration isn't just about sipping water. It's actually about long-term cellular hydration. So herbal teas, water-rich foods, and minimizing dehydrators like alcohol and caffeine where possible can be really helpful for this. I always say to people when we have the conversation around alcohol and caffeine, you still need to live your life and enjoy it, but sometimes being aware of the impact it can have on the voice and drying out the area of the vocal tract, and maybe some impact on acid reflux as well, I think it's worth just being aware of. One thing I often recommend, or actually I would say probably almost always recommend to people, is steam inhalation. This can be a really useful one for hydration, and is really simple to do. You can just half fill a mug with hot water, hold it under your chin, and practice that deep diaphragmatic breathing that we've spoken about for a few minutes each day. You can do this for 2 or 3 times a day, and it is so simple but can be so effective. This is something that I've been doing a bit more recently, actually, with quite severe hay fever, and taking antihistamines, which they cause quite a drying effect on the area of the vocal tract. And I've noticed that, and so have been using steam inhalation every day, and can say from that personal experience, it really does help.
Yeah, I love that steam inhalation. Actually, it's like you say, it's so easy to do, and I find that it just really softens. Maybe softens not the right word, but it kind of smooths the tract, and you feel like, yeah, it's hydrated. It's
absolutely. And yeah, a lot of people do use proper steam inhalers, and maybe for professional voice users, that might be a bit more useful. But I would say for the average person, using just a mug, we've all got a mug in the cupboard, and we're often also boiling the kettle 2 or 3 times a day. So just boiling a little bit of extra water, and whilst you're waiting for your tea to brew or something like that, just practice some steaming. Really easy to do, and very achievable.
And sleep is also massive. So I love my sleep, and I find that if I don't sleep well, or if my sleep is shortened, I have a more crackly, croaky voice the next day, and usually throughout the whole day. Your vocal folds are tissue. They repair and regenerate when you sleep. And if you are sleep deprived, your voice will feel it, especially in the various ranges that you use your voice in. So, my voice naturally sits quite low. And that's where I would normally feel it quite crackly as I'm trying to move up through the various ranges. I don't know if you get that, Eve. Do you struggle with the higher register when you are sleep deprived, or does it work for you?
Yeah, absolutely. That range in my voice certainly does reduce when I am feeling a bit more tired. And often, I think everyone has a bit of a morning voice, don't they? Which tends to be a bit lower. Yeah, I think sleep is a huge one, and thanks for bringing our awareness to it, Holly, because it's so important. We're aware of how important it is for the body and for the mind, but often, again, we don't think about how it relates to the voice. So yeah, really, really nice point. And also, don't forget to fuel. If you're singing or speaking on an empty stomach, or talking for hours with no energy in the tank again, it impacts vocal stamina.
And I think particularly for non-professional voice users, so if you're in the office, or you've got a meeting, or you're just chatting with colleagues, I think it's very easy to lose track of time. You're rushing around between various appointments and not eating maybe when you should, so you're low on fuel, and that can be draining without you realizing it, and certainly impacts that stamina. So it's really important to make sure that you are fueled to get the best out of your tank. And it isn't just about the voice and the muscles that surround the voice and the vocal tract. Vocal endurance is part of the lifestyle. So again, we don't just want to be doing these things when we've got an issue, when we've got a dysfunction. We want to be doing these things as part of our day to day. Like Eve said, while you're making your cup of tea or waiting for it to brew, you can do some deep inhalation with that hot water, steam inhalation. Making it part of the day means you're more likely to do it. It's more part of the routine, and more likely to be repeatable and become habit, and a good habit, right?
Yeah, and this is something we mentioned in the last episode as well, around just picking a few things, 2 or 3 things, and sticking with it as well. Yeah, really important to think about what is it that feels right for you in terms of how you're using your voice and when it's burning out. So, moving on to our last pillar, which is often overlooked. This one is around mental and emotional endurance.
And yeah, when you're stressed or anxious or emotionally drained, your voice carries that. And you can often hear it, right? If someone is stressed or anxious when they're trying to do a presentation or trying to speak, you can hear it. It sounds tight, or they might speak a bit more rushed or quickly, or maybe they might not be breathing as much as they should in between the speaking. So tension can show up in the jaw, the tongue, and the breath. And again, this is something we have spoken about in the previous episodes.
And voice use is also emotional labour. Teachers, therapists, performers, managers, anyone actually who uses their voice, which is everyone, we're often around other people. It might be colleagues or friends and family. And we're always using our voice to communicate with other people. So try to be honest about your vocal capacity day to day. It probably will vary, but it's really important to recognise, is that tank empty? Do you need to stop?
And I was just thinking, and actually, as you said that, you know, someone who is on stage, maybe in the West End doing a show 3 or 4 times a day, they're maybe more on the extrovert side of a voice user versus what I'm going to refer to as more of an introverted user who maybe doesn't use their voice as much day to day. So on the extroverted scale, they will be able to use their voice for longer, and they've got a stronger vocal tract and it's trained and it's a stronger muscle. So they still need to rest, but they will be able to endure for a longer period of time than someone who maybe doesn't speak that much or doesn't have a lot of meetings and maybe does a lot of, you know, operational work behind the scenes, for example, their voice might get tired a lot more quickly. So it's not about comparing yourself to others. One size does not fit all. We are all different, and what's sustainable for your voice might not be the same as what's sustainable for someone else's voice. And also, you know, like we've mentioned above, one night you might sleep really well and your vocal fatigue might not come in until a bit later. Versus if you don't sleep so well, you might find that your voice gets tired a bit more quickly. And building that muscle, training that vocal muscle, and leading to that endurance growing over time.
Yeah, that's a great point, Holly. And compassion, self-compassion is part of this, isn't it? Like how you were just talking about how every single person is different and will have different experiences and different abilities with their voice. So resting is not a sign of weakness. It's actually the foundation of growth.
I really like that. And again, I'm going back to the sporting analogy. You know, you can't train 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And even these elite athletes, they do need to build in rest to make sure that they can perform and their muscles can perform and they can endure and grow, exactly like you said. So rest is really key to recovery and strength building, right? Endurance building.
Yeah, it's part of being a human, right?
Exactly. So quick recap: to build vocal endurance without burnout, you need to think about some of the things we've covered today, and maybe not all of them, like Eve said already. Maybe pick out a couple of things and try to build them in your day-to-day routine. So it's thinking about breath and the body awareness. So it's all connected and it all works as one, and it works best when it's working as one. Thinking about solid techniques. So how are you using your voice? How loud is your voice? Thinking about smart load management and solid foundations to give you that stability in your voice for vocal endurance. Thinking importantly about hydration, sleep, and nutrition, because when your voice is dry, it doesn't work, it can't work. And when you're tired, same again, it can't work. And finally, that emotional self-awareness. So that kind of taps into all of the other pillars really that we've mentioned above, that self-awareness of what's going on with your body, your voice, and how you're feeling in yourself is really key. And if you only take away one thing from today, let it be that self-awareness of what's going on.
Hopefully this gives you permission, not just to train smarter with your voice, but to honour your voice as a whole body and whole self experience.
Really nice. And if you love this episode, which we hope you did, please share it with a fellow voice user. Give us a follow and leave a rating. It really helps other people to find the voice itself. And please do join us next month for our next episode, which is the emotional landscape of voice, how to navigate anxiety and build confidence.
Until next time, stay grounded, stay curious, and stay voiced.